On a frost-covered morning of January 15th, 2023 in Boston's North End, Sophia Reeves felt the cold metal of her wheelchair beneath her palms as her fiancé's words shattered her world. "I can't marry someone who'll never walk down the aisle." Blood pounded in her ears as Thomas Kingston, heir to the city's largest development company, walked away from their 3-year relationship, leaving her abandoned at the wedding venue with 24 hours until their ceremony. The pain seared through her immobile legs like phantom fire while guests whispered the most humiliating rejection ever witnessed in Boston society. When Vincent Caruso, the most feared crime boss in Massachusetts, witnessed her dignity in devastation, something extraordinary ignited in his dark world. This is the story of how one woman's broken engagement became the catalyst for the most unexpected alliance in Boston's underworld. Subscribe now to discover how a paralyzed bride and a dangerous man rewrote the rules of power, protection, and unexpected love. The fading January sunlight filtered through the windows of Sophia Reeves's downtown Boston apartment as she carefully adjusted the bodice of her wedding dress, her slim fingers smoothing invisible wrinkles from the delicate fabric. At 28, Sophia possessed a quiet beauty, chestnut hair that fell in soft waves to her shoulders, intelligent hazel eyes, and high cheekbones that caught the light when she smiled. Today, however, her face was tight with concentration as she maneuvered her wheelchair closer to the full-length mirror. "Something's still not right," she murmured, her brow furrowing as she studied her reflection. The custom gown was exquisite, an off-shoulder creation of lace and silk that pooled elegantly around the wheels of her chair. But anxiety gnawed at her stomach. Her best friend and maid of honor Danielle stepped into view, her expression softening. "Sophia, you look absolutely stunning. Thomas won't know what hit him." "If he shows up," Sophia said quietly, the words slipping out before she could stop them. "What do you mean, if? Of course he'll be there. The rehearsal dinner is in 3 hours." Danielle knelt beside the wheelchair, forcing Sophia to meet her eyes. "Has something happened?" Sophia's hands twisted in her lap. "He's been distant ever since the final fitting when we decided I'd use my chair rather than trying to arrange something with braces and helpers. His mother made a comment about how it wouldn't look right in the photos. His mother is a nightmare who's never approved of anyone. You know that. It's not just her. Thomas has been postponing meetings with the accessibility company about making adjustments to their house." Sophia's voice tightened. "And yesterday he asked if I was sure I didn't want to try walking down the aisle with crutches." Danielle's expression hardened. "After 5 years since your accident, he knows that's not realistic." "You've been clear about your capabilities from day one?" "I thought he'd accepted it." Sophia turned back to the mirror, studying the contrast between the pristine white gown and the sleek metal of her wheelchair. "Sometimes I catch him looking at me when he doesn't think I notice. There's something in his eyes, like he's mourning what could have been." Before Danielle could respond, Sophia's phone chimed with a text message. Her stomach dropped as she read it. "It's Thomas. He wants to meet at the venue. Now, alone." Her voice trembled slightly. "He says there is something important we need to discuss before tomorrow." Across town in Boston's North End, Vincent Caruso sat at his desk in the back office of Caruso's, the Italian restaurant that had been in his family for 3 generations. At 42, Vincent cut an imposing figure, broad-shouldered and powerfully built, with olive skin, sharp features, and eyes so dark they appeared almost black. A thin scar ran from his right temple to his jawline, the only visible reminder of the violence that had punctuated his rise to power. On paper, Vincent was a successful restaurateur and real estate investor. In reality, he controlled most of the organized crime in Boston's historic Italian neighborhood and beyond. His operation was streamlined, modern, and ruthlessly efficient, focusing primarily on protection, high-interest loans, and strategic investments in businesses throughout the city. "Boss, the Kingston deal is getting complicated." Marco Rossi, Vincent's consigliere and childhood friend, placed a folder on the desk. "Thomas Kingston is trying to back out of our arrangement." Vincent's expression remained neutral, but his eyes hardened. The development contract was signed 2 months ago. His father agreed to our terms. Senior is in the hospital. Junior thinks he can renegotiate now that he's temporarily in charge. Marco lowered his voice. Word is he's planning to announce a new partnership after his wedding tomorrow, with the Sullivan Group. Vincent's fingers tapped a slow rhythm on the mahogany desk. The Sullivans were Irish mobsters from Southie, rivals who had been encroaching on Caruso territory for years. This wasn't just business, it was a deliberate provocation. Kingston's wedding is at St. Mary's? Vincent asked. Marco nodded. Big society event. Guest list includes half the city council, police commissioner, several judges. And the bride? Sophia Reeves, former physical therapist, was in a car accident 5 years ago that left her paralyzed from the waist down. Comes from money, but not as much as the Kingstons. Good family, though. Father was a surgeon at Mass General before he retired. Vincent stood adjusting his impeccably tailored suit. I think I should congratulate the happy couple in person, maybe take a wedding gift to the venue today. Marco's eyebrows rose slightly. Now? The best business discussions happen at unexpected moments, Vincent replied, his voice cool and measured. Besides, I'm curious about this woman who's marrying into our problem. The historic church stood starkly against the January sky, its stone facade weathered by centuries of Boston winters. Sophia navigated her wheelchair up the accessibility ramp, a recent addition that had required special permission from the Historical Society. Her heart hammered in her chest as she entered the empty sanctuary. Rows of pews stretched before her, waiting to be filled with 200 guests the following day. Thomas stood at the altar, his tall figure silhouetted against the stained glass windows. At 32, Thomas Kingston was the embodiment of Boston blue blood, Harvard-educated, impeccably groomed, with the easy confidence of someone who had never known real hardship. His family's real estate development company had built half the luxury condominiums in the city. He turned as Sophia approached, his handsome features arranged in a pained expression that immediately sent ice through her veins. "Thank you for coming," he said formally, as though addressing a business associate rather than his fiancée of 3 years. "What's going on, Thomas?" Sophia kept her voice steady, despite the dread building inside her. He wouldn't meet her eyes. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, Sophia, about our future, about what marriage really means. And you decided to do this thinking the day before our wedding?" She maneuvered her chair closer, forcing him to look at her. "Whatever it is, just say it." Thomas ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, disarranging it for perhaps the first time in their relationship. "I care about you deeply. You know that. That sentence never ends well. This isn't easy for me." His voice hardened slightly. "I've tried to make this work. Really tried. But I've been kidding myself." "About what exactly?" Sophia's fingers gripped the arms of her wheelchair tightly, her knuckles whitening. "About being able to handle this for the rest of my life." He gestured vaguely toward her wheelchair, the constant accommodations, the limitations, the stares from people. Sophia felt as though she'd been struck. The stares from people? Oh, that's what you're worried about? It's not just that. It's everything. The modifications to the house that would destroy its historical value. The trips we can't take. The activities we can't do together. His voice rose slightly. The children we might not be able to have. We've discussed all of this for years. I've been in this chair since before we started dating, Sophia said, her voice shaking with anger now. None of this is new information, Thomas. I thought I could accept it. Thomas finally met her gaze, his blue eyes clouded with what looked disturbingly like pity. I wanted to be the bigger man, the guy who could see past the disability, but I can't keep pretending. Pretending? The word felt like glass in her mouth. I don't want this life, Sophia. I deserve someone whole. The sanctuary seemed to tilt around her. The cruelty of his words hung in the air between them, made worse by the setting. The very place where they were supposed to pledge their lives to one another. You deserve someone whole, she repeated, her voice hollow. And when, exactly, did you decide I wasn't whole? That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. Sophia's hands trembled, but her voice grew stronger. You're breaking up with me, the day before our wedding, Because of my disability, which you've known about from the beginning. Thomas had the decency to look ashamed, but it didn't stop him. I'll handle everything, the guests, the vendors. My family's PR team will craft a statement. How considerate, Sophia said, ice in her voice. And what will this statement say? That you suddenly discovered I can't walk and it shocked you? Sophia, don't make this harder. I'm not making anything harder. You're the one destroying 3 years and walking away less than 24 hours before our wedding. Tears threatened, but she refused to let them fall. At least have the courage to be honest about why. Thomas's expression hardened. Fine. I can't do it. I can't marry someone who'll never walk down the aisle, who'll never dance with me at our reception, who needs special accommodation for everything, who might not be able to give me children. Is that honest enough for you? Each word struck like a physical blow. Sophia sat perfectly still, absorbing the impact of his cruelty, feeling the final death of something she'd believed in completely. In that moment she realized she'd never really known the man standing before her. "Get out," she whispered. "Sophia, get out!" Her voice echoed through the empty church. "Get out now, or I swear I will wheel myself down that aisle tomorrow just to tell everyone exactly what kind of man you really are." Vincent Caruso paused at the entrance to the church, signaling for Marco to wait outside. He had expected to find the venue bustling with wedding preparations. Instead, he heard raised voices echoing from within the sanctuary. Silently, he moved closer, remaining in the shadows of the vestibule. "I deserve someone whole," a man's voice said, the words carrying clearly through the perfect acoustics of the church. Vincent stilled, his eyes narrowing as he recognized Thomas Kingston's voice and realized what was happening. He should leave. This was a private moment, not business. Yet something kept him rooted to the spot. The raw emotion in the woman's voice, perhaps, or the sheer cowardice of Kingston's timing. "You're breaking up with me the day before our wedding, because of my disability, which you've known about from the beginning." Vincent had seen many ugly things in his life, had been responsible for some of them, but there was something particularly despicable about what he was witnessing. He watched as Thomas Kingston stormed past him, too wrapped up in his own drama to notice Vincent standing in the shadows. Through the doorway, he could see a woman in a wheelchair, her back straight and her head high, despite the devastation that must be coursing through her. Something unexpected stirred in Vincent's chest, not pity. He could tell this woman wouldn't want that. Something more like respect mingled with a quiet, controlled rage toward Kingston. Vincent had always adhered to certain principles, even in his darker dealings. Family loyalty, keeping one's word, standing by commitments. And in that moment, watching Sophia Reeves compose herself in the aftermath of betrayal, Vincent made a decision that would alter both their lives irrevocably. Sophia sat alone in the vast emptiness of the church, the enormity of what had just happened washing over her in waves. 3 years of her life, 200 people expected tomorrow, a honeymoon to Italy already booked with carefully researched accessible accommodations. A future she had planned and believed in, gone in an instant. The sound of footsteps broke through her thoughts, slow, measured steps coming down the center aisle. Sophia quickly wiped at her eyes, not wanting anyone to witness her in this state. "The church is closed for a private event," she called out, her voice steadier than she felt. "I know," a deep male voice responded. "I'm here about that event." Sophia turned her wheelchair to face the stranger. The man approaching was unlike anyone in Thomas's social circle. Tall and broad-shouldered, he moved with the controlled grace of someone completely at ease with his physical power. His dark suit was clearly expensive but understated, his presence commanding without effort. What caught her attention most, however, was the way he looked directly at her. Not at her wheelchair, not with pity or discomfort, but with a straightforward intensity that was almost disconcerting. "If you're from the catering company, you should know there's been a change of plans," Sophia said, struggling to maintain her composure. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly, not quite a smile. "I'm not with catering, Vincent Caruso." He extended his hand to her, the gesture natural and expectant, as though he had no doubt she would take it. Sophia hesitated only briefly before accepting the handshake. His grip was firm, his hand warm and calloused, the hand of someone who had worked for what he had. "Sophia Reeves," she replied automatically, then narrowed her eyes. "I don't believe we've met, Mr. Caruso. Are you a friend of Thomas?" Something cold flashed in Vincent's dark eyes at the mention of Thomas's name. "No, not a friend. We have business connections." "Well, whatever business you had regarding the wedding is no longer relevant," Sophia said, straightening in her chair. "The wedding is canceled." "So I gathered." Vincent's gaze was steady, assessing. "Kingston is a fool." The blunt statement caught Sophia off guard. There was no sympathy in his voice, just a matter-of-fact declaration. "You heard. Enough." He moved closer, stopping at a respectful distance. "I apologize for intruding on a private moment. I should have made my presence known." "It doesn't matter." Sophia felt oddly calm in this stranger's presence. There was something solid about him, something authentic, that contrasted sharply with Thomas's carefully constructed persona. By tomorrow, everyone will know anyway. 200 of Boston's elite will be getting cancellation calls tonight. Vincent seemed to consider something, his dark eyes unreadable. "May I ask you a question, Ms. Reeves?" "Why not? This day can hardly get worse." "What will you do now?" The question was simple, but struck at the heart of her dilemma. What would she do? Retreat in shame? Face the pitying looks and whispered gossip that would inevitably follow? The thought made her stomach twist. "I don't know," she admitted. "Hide for a while, probably. Let Thomas's family spin whatever story makes them look best." "And that satisfies you?" Vincent's tone remained neutral, but the question itself felt like a challenge. Sophia felt a flicker of irritation. "No, it doesn't satisfy me. But I'm not exactly in a position to—" She stopped herself, aware of how defensive she sounded. "I'm sorry. You don't need to hear this. And I'm sure you have better things to do than listen to a jilted bride." "Actually, I don't." Vincent's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "And for what it's worth, Kingston showed his true character today. You're better without him." "That's kind of you to say, but it doesn't change the fact that I'm about to become Boston's favorite topic of gossip." Sophia sighed, suddenly exhausted. 200 people will know that Thomas Kingston couldn't bring himself to marry a woman in a wheelchair. That's going to be a fun reputation to live with. Vincent was silent for a moment, his expression thoughtful. When he spoke again, his voice had a different quality to it, measured and precise, as though weighing each word. What if there was a way to change that narrative? Sophia gave a bitter laugh. "Unless you can magically produce another groom by tomorrow, I don't see how." The silence that followed her statement was unexpected. Sophia looked up to find Vincent studying her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Perhaps I can," he said finally. "Can what?" "Produce another groom." His expression remained serious, no hint of humor or mockery. Sophia stared at him, certain she had misunderstood. "Mr. Caruso, if that's a joke, it's not." "I don't joke about such matters," Vincent interrupted gently. "I'm proposing a solution to your immediate problem." "You're proposing?" Sophia felt as though she had stepped into some alternate reality. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." Vincent moved to sit in the pew closest to her, bringing them to eye level. "I know you've been publicly humiliated by a man who lacks both honor and courage. I know you face significant social fallout. And I know that I'm in a position to help if you're willing to consider an unconventional arrangement." Sophia's mind raced. What kind of arrangement are we talking about exactly? A marriage of convenience? Initially? Vincent spoke with the calm precision of someone outlining a business proposal. "You avoid the public humiliation of a canceled wedding. I gain certain advantages in my business dealings. After an appropriate period, we could quietly divorce or continue if the arrangement proves beneficial to both parties." "You're serious," Sophia whispered, studying his face for any sign of deception. "Entirely." Vincent held her gaze steadily. "I understand this is sudden and unexpected. I'm not asking for an immediate answer. Think about it. Consider your alternatives." "Why would you do this? What business advantages could possibly be worth marrying a complete stranger?" Sophia's analytical mind was beginning to function again, pushing through the shock. A hint of something dangerous flickered in Vincent's eyes. Let's just say it would create certain useful connections and send a very specific message in some business circles. Realization dawned slowly. This is about Thomas. You want to use me to get to him? Not exactly. This is about what Thomas represents, and yes, marrying his ex-fiancée would create complications for him and advantages for me. Vincent's honesty was refreshing, if somewhat alarming. But I'm not suggesting using you as a pawn. This would be a partnership with mutual benefits. What benefits would I possibly get beyond avoiding immediate humiliation? Financial security, social standing, different from what Kingston offered, but significant in its own way, protection. Vincent leaned forward slightly. And the satisfaction of showing Kingston and Boston society that you were never the one lacking options. The word protection caught Sophia's attention. There was something in the way he said it, something that hinted at exactly who Vincent Caruso really was. The name had seemed vaguely familiar, and now pieces were clicking into place. "You're not just a businessman, are you?" she asked carefully. Vincent's smile was slight but genuine. "I own several legitimate businesses, including a restaurant in the North End and various real estate investments. But no, that's not all I am." "You're connected," Sophia said, using the euphemism deliberately. Yes, the single-word admission should have frightened her. Instead, Sophia felt an odd sense of clarity. This was no fairy tale rescue, no romantic gesture. It was a practical proposition from a dangerous man with his own motives. And yet, there was a straightforwardness to it that felt honest in a way Thomas never had been. "I need time to think," she said finally. Vincent nodded, reaching into his jacket to produce a business card. "Call this number when you've made your decision. If I don't hear from you by midnight, I'll assume you've declined." He stood, adjusting his suit jacket. "For what it's worth, Ms. Reeves, I believe you would bring significant value to such an arrangement. Your composure under pressure is remarkable." As he turned to leave, Sophia found her voice again. "Mr. Caruso?" He paused, looking back at her. "Why me? Surely there are women in your circle who would be more suitable." Something unexpected crossed his face, a flash of genuine emotion breaking through his controlled exterior. "I admire resilience, Ms. Reeves, and I despise cowards like Thomas Kingston." He held her gaze for a moment longer. "Besides, you're already wearing the dress." The Caruso family restaurant was closed for a private event that evening, though to any observer it appeared to be business as usual. The warm glow of pendant lights illuminated the rustic interior, and delicious aromas wafted from the kitchen. In the private dining room at the back, however, Vincent had assembled his most trusted associates. "Do you want to do what?" Marco's voice rose in disbelief. "Boss, with all respect, have you lost your mind?" Vincent remained calm, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "It's a strategic decision. Marrying a woman you met today is not strategy, it's insanity," Marco countered, pacing the room. "And not just any woman, Kingston's cast-off fiancée. The timing alone will make our business enemies think you've gone soft." "Or that I've made the ultimate power move," Vincent replied evenly, taking what Kingston discarded and elevating it beyond his reach. Across the table, Eliana Caruso, Vincent's younger sister and the family's financial strategist, studied her brother with knowing eyes. At 38, she shared Vincent's sharp features and penetrating gaze, though her approach was often more subtle than her brother's. "This isn't just about business," she said softly. "What aren't you telling us, Vince?" Vincent met his sister's gaze steadily. "You didn't see her, Eli, sitting there in that empty church, back straight, head high, refusing to break even after that coward gutted her." "So this is about admiration?" Eliana pressed. "It's about recognizing quality when I see it." Vincent set down his glass. "Kingston walking away from her because of her disability tells me everything I need to know about him, and about her. She's stronger than he'll ever be." "Boss," Marco interjected, "I understand the appeal of besting Kingston, but marriage? There are other ways to ruin him." "This isn't just about ruining Kingston. It's about building something unexpected." Vincent looked around the table. "Think about it. The Kingstons have been blocking our legitimate business expansion for years. Their development company controls half the city permits we need. By tomorrow, they would have had judges, council members, and the police commissioner at their family table. Understanding dawned in Eliana's eyes. And if you step in as the groom, exactly. The guest list doesn't change. The connections are still made. But they're made with me, not Kingston. Vincent's expression hardened. Plus, the woman deserves better than to be humiliated in front of Boston's elite. That matters to me. Since when do you care about society weddings and saving face for strangers? Don Marco asked, though his tone had softened somewhat. Vincent was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight that silenced the room. My mother was in a wheelchair the last 5 years of her life. You all remember how people treated her, like she was invisible or an inconvenience. How the respect she'd earned over decades suddenly meant nothing, because she couldn't walk into a room under her own power. The mention of Maria Caruso, the family matriarch who had ruled with a gentle but iron will until her death 3 years earlier, shifted the atmosphere in the room. Mama would have liked this woman, Vincent continued. She has dignity, strength. She deserves allies, not pity. Eliana reached across the table to touch her brother's hand. You're serious about this? I am. Then we'll make it work, she said simply. If she says yes. Marco sighed, recognizing when her decision had been made. Fine, but we do this right. Pre-nuptial agreements, clear terms, and security measures. Our enemies will see this as either a weakness to exploit or a power move to counter. Vincent nodded. Already planned for. Now we wait for her call. Sophia sat in her apartment surrounded by wedding gifts that now seemed like cruel reminders of a future that would never materialize. Danielle had come immediately after receiving her call, bringing emergency wine and fierce loyalty. He said what? Danielle's voice rose in outrage. That he deserves someone whole? I will destroy him. Socially, financially, physically, I haven't decided which yet, but destruction is coming. Despite everything, Sophia found herself smiling at her friend's protective anger. Get in line. I'm still deciding between public humiliation and quiet, dignified disappearance. There's nothing dignified about disappearing, Danielle declared, pouring more wine. That just lets him win. Lets his awful mother win. I know, Sophia sighed, looking down at Vincent Caruso's business card, which she'd been turning over in her hands. That's partly why I'm considering a third option. What third option? Sophia hesitated, then explained her unexpected encounter with Vincent Caruso and his proposition. As she spoke, Danielle's expression shifted from shocked to thoughtful. Vincent Caruso, Danielle repeated when Sophia finished. The Vincent Caruso? North End restaurant family, with the extremely successful import business on the side? You know him? Of him, Danielle clarified. Everyone in legal circles does. He's never been convicted of anything, but his name comes up in certain conversations. He's old school, runs a tight operation, takes care of his people, doesn't involve civilians. She studied Sophia carefully. He's dangerous, Soph. Not in the random violent way, but in the calculated, powerful way. I figured as much. Sophia glanced at the clock, 10:30 p.m., 90 minutes to decide. Is it crazy that I'm actually considering this? Yes, Danielle said immediately, then paused. And no, Thomas humiliated you. Walking into that church tomorrow with Vincent Caruso instead would be the ultimate power move. She leaned forward. But Soph, this isn't just about tomorrow. Marriage, even one of convenience, creates legal ties that are complicated to unravel. And this man operates in a world we know nothing about. I know. Sophia wheeled herself to the window, looking out at the Boston skyline. But there was something about him, Danny. The way he looked at me, directly at me, not at the chair. The way he spoke about Thomas's lack of honor, like it was the most disgusting thing he'd ever encountered. Old world values, Danielle murmured. The irony of a crime boss having a stronger moral code than Boston's golden boy development heir. Is it possible to enter into something like this with clear eyes? To know exactly what I'm getting into and still choose it? Danielle came to stand beside her friend. If anyone could, it would be you. You've never been one for self-delusion. She squeezed Sophia's shoulder. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. If you marry Boston's most enigmatic crime boss tomorrow, I'll still be your maid of honor, and I'll rock that dress. Sophia laughed, the sound surprising her after hours of emotional devastation. I haven't said yes yet. But you're going to, aren't you? Sophia looked down at the business card once more. I think I am. God help me, I think I am. At precisely 11:45 p.m., Vincent's private phone rang. He had been sitting alone in his study, a glass of scotch untouched before him, staring at reports but not really seeing them. He answered on the second ring. Caruso, it's Sophia Reeves. Her voice was clear and steady. I've considered your proposal. Vincent felt a tightening in his chest, anticipation perhaps. And? I have conditions. A smile tugged at his lips. Not a simple yes, but not a rejection either. I'm listening. First, this is temporary. 1 year minimum for appearance's sake. No more than 2 years unless mutually agreed upon. Acceptable, Vincent replied, impressed by her directness. Second, I maintain my independence. My own career, my own finances, my own social circle. I won't be a prisoner or a showpiece. I would expect nothing less. Third, Sophia continued, complete honesty between us about expectations and boundaries. I don't need to know the details of your business operations, but I won't be lied to about our arrangement. Agreed. Vincent found himself respecting her more with each condition. May I add some terms of my own? Go ahead. For this to work, we need to present a united front publicly. That means attending certain functions together, maintaining appropriate appearances, and consulting each other before making decisions that might affect our public image. Reasonable? Sophia conceded. What else? Your safety becomes my priority. That means security measures you'll need to accept and protocols to follow, not to control you, he added quickly, but to protect you from those who might see you as a way to get to me. There was a brief silence as she absorbed this. That's sobering, but understandable. Lastly, Vincent said, his voice softening slightly, I would ask for your discretion. What you see and hear in my home and business remains private. Of course, Sophia paused. So, are we doing this? It seems we are, Ms. Reeves. Vincent felt something unexpected, a sense of certainty, of rightness in this bizarre situation. Shall I send a car for you in the morning? No, Sophia replied, and he could hear determination in her voice. If we're doing this, we're doing it properly. I'll arrive at the church on my own as planned. You meet me there. No one knows about the change until they see you at the altar instead of Thomas. Vincent smiled genuinely this time. I like how you think. One more thing, Sophia added. Why are you really doing this, Mr. Caruso? And please don't give me the business advantage explanation again. There's more to it. Vincent was silent for a long moment. My mother was in a wheelchair, he finally said, his voice low. For the last 5 years of her life. She was the strongest person I've ever known, but I saw how people looked at her, how they spoke over her head, as if the chair somehow diminished her mind as well as her mobility. I know that look well, Sophia said softly. I'm sure you do. Vincent cleared his throat. What Kingston did, walking away because he couldn't handle your disability, it reminded me of how people treated her. She deserved better. So do you. The honesty of this admission hung between them, creating an unexpected connection. Thank you for telling me, Sophia said finally. I'll see you at the church, Mr. Caruso. Vincent, he corrected gently. I think we're beyond formalities now. Vincent, she repeated, his name unfamiliar on her tongue. I'm Sophia. Good night, Sophia. Try to get some sleep. Tomorrow will be eventful. After hanging up, Vincent sat in the quiet of his study, considering the path he had just committed to. It was impulsive, potentially dangerous, and entirely unlike him. Yet he couldn't bring himself to regret it. His phone buzzed with a text from Marco. Security arrangements in place for tomorrow. Team briefed. Is this really happening? Vincent typed a simple response. Yes. She said yes. The morning of what should have been Thomas Kingston and Sophia Reeves' wedding dawned clear and cold, the January sun glinting off fresh snow that had fallen overnight. By 10 a.m., guests had begun to arrive at the historic church, Boston's elite in their finest winter attire, oblivious to the drama that had unfolded the previous day. In a small anteroom of the church, Sophia sat in her wedding gown, surprisingly calm, despite the magnitude of what she was about to do. Danielle adjusted the delicate veil in her hair, both women ignoring the constant buzzing of Sophia's phone as Thomas's increasingly frantic messages came through. "He's panicking," Danielle reported, glancing at the latest text. "Says his mother is having an episode because you haven't canceled the wedding." "Good," Sophia said, applying a final touch of lipstick. "Let him sweat." The door opened slightly, and the wedding coordinator poked her head in, her expression confused. "Ms. Reeves, there seems to be some confusion. Thomas isn't here, but there's another gentleman waiting at the altar who says he's the groom." Danielle grinned. "Right on cue." "Everything is proceeding as planned, Charlotte," Sophia said smoothly. "There's been a change in groom, but the wedding is definitely still happening." The coordinator's professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing naked curiosity before she composed herself. "Of course, we're ready when you are. Your father is waiting to escort you." When the door closed, Danielle turned to Sophia. "Last chance to back out." Sophia checked her reflection one final time. "No backing out. I've been stood up by Boston royalty and picked up by Boston's underworld. There's a certain poetry to it." She smiled, a genuine expression that reached her eyes for the first time in 24 hours. "Besides, you should see Thomas's mother's face when Vincent Caruso appears instead of her precious son." "You're enjoying this," Danielle observed with approval. "Oddly enough, I am." Sophia adjusted her position in her wheelchair. "It's time. Let's give Boston something to talk about." In the main sanctuary, the string quartet played softly as 200 of Boston's most influential citizens filled the pews. At the altar, Vincent Caruso stood in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his dark good looks and commanding presence drawing curious whispers from the assembled guests. Marco, now serving as best man, leaned in close. "Kingston just arrived," he murmured. "Back entrance. Looks like he's trying to stop this." Vincent smiled slightly, never taking his eyes off the main doors of the church. "He's too late." The music changed, signaling the start of the ceremony. The doors opened, and there was an audible gasp from the congregation as Sophia appeared in her wheelchair, a vision in white, her father standing proudly beside her. If people had expected to see a broken woman after Thomas's rejection, they were sorely disappointed. Sophia radiated confidence and a quiet dignity that silenced even the most eager gossips. As her father guided her wheelchair down the aisle, Sophia kept her gaze fixed on Vincent. He watched her approach with an intensity that made the rest of the room fade away. This wasn't how either of them had expected to begin this day, but there was an undeniable sense of rightness to the moment. Two people who had recognized something valuable in each other amid circumstances neither had anticipated. When she reached the altar, Vincent stepped forward and took her hand, his touch warm and steady. "You look beautiful," he said quietly, the simple words carrying more sincerity than any elaborate compliment. "Thank you for being here," she replied, equally soft. The minister, who had been hastily briefed on the change in groom, recovered his composure and began the ceremony. From the corner of her eye, Sophia could see Thomas standing at the back of the church, his face a mask of shock and growing anger. Beside him, his mother looked as though she might faint. As Vincent and Sophia exchanged vows, traditional words that took on new meaning in their unconventional circumstances, a strange calm settled over Sophia. This wasn't the fairy tale she had once imagined. It was something altogether different, a partnership forged in mutual respect and shared purpose rather than romantic love. Perhaps, she thought as Vincent gently slipped a ring onto her finger, that was a stronger foundation than she'd had with Thomas after all. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister declared, looking somewhat bewildered by the palpable tension in the church. "You may kiss the bride." Vincent leaned down, his dark eyes questioning. Sophia nodded slightly, and his lips met hers in a kiss that was brief but surprisingly tender. As they turned to face the congregation as Vincent and Sophia Caruso, the shocked faces of Boston society stared back at them. And at the back of the church, Thomas Kingston slipped away, his carefully constructed world beginning to crumble as he realized exactly whose power he had inadvertently challenged. The reception that followed at the Four Seasons was a study in social dynamics. Half the guests were clearly shocked and confused, whispering behind champagne glasses about the sudden replacement of Boston's golden boy with a man whose reputation provoked both fear and fascination. The other half, sensing which way the wind was blowing, had already adjusted their approach, offering effusive congratulations to the new couple and making sure Vincent Caruso noticed their support. Sophia observed it all with a detached amusement, her hand resting lightly on Vincent's arm as he guided her wheelchair through the crowd. She had expected to feel like an imposter, but instead found herself settling into the role of Mrs. Caruso with surprising ease. Vincent treated her with a natural respect that made their partnership seem genuine, never hovering or over-assisting, but remaining attentively by her side. "Judge Calloway is watching us like he's trying to solve a particularly difficult puzzle," Sophia murmured, as they accepted congratulations from the city councilwoman. Vincent's lips curved slightly. "He's calculating whether to maintain his connections to the Kingston family or start building bridges to us instead." "And which will he choose?" "You'll know in about 30 seconds when he either approaches us or makes his excuses to leave early." Sure enough, moments later, the distinguished judge was making his way toward them, hand extended and smile firmly in place. "Vincent, what an unexpected pleasure to see you here today, and Mrs. Caruso, you are absolutely radiant." Sophia accepted the judge's kiss on her hand with a gracious smile. "Thank you, Judge Calloway. I'm so pleased you could attend our special day." As the judge engaged Vincent in conversation about a community development project, Sophia caught sight of Patricia Kingston, Thomas's mother, watching them from across the room with naked hostility. Beside her stood Thomas, his handsome face twisted with a combination of shock and anger. Vincent followed her gaze. "Would you like to leave? We don't have to stay." "No," Sophia said firmly. "This was my wedding day, long before it was yours. I'm not leaving because they're uncomfortable." She met his eyes. "But thank you for offering." A flash of approval crossed Vincent's face. "Then let's give them something to really talk about." He signaled to the band, which had been playing soft background music. "I believe it's traditional for the bride and groom to have a first dance." Sophia's eyes widened slightly. "Vincent, I can't—" "I know," his expression softened, "but we can adapt traditions, can't we?" Before she could respond, Vincent had moved behind her wheelchair and was guiding her to the center of the dance floor. The band began playing a slow, romantic melody, and Vincent circled around to face her, taking both her hands in his. "May I have this dance, Mrs. Caruso?" he asked, his voice carrying just enough to be heard by those nearby. Understanding dawned in Sophia's eyes as Vincent began to move, guiding her wheelchair in a gentle, flowing pattern around the dance floor while holding her hands. It wasn't a traditional dance, but it was graceful, dignified, and unmistakably intimate. Across the room, Thomas Kingston's face drained of color as he watched the woman he had rejected for not being able to dance create something new and beautiful with a man who had simply found a different way. As they moved together, Vincent leaned down to speak privately in Sophia's ear. "You're making quite an impression." "We both are," she replied, genuinely smiling now. "This wasn't what I expected when I woke up yesterday." "Life rarely gives us what we expect," Vincent said, his hands warm and steady on hers. "Sometimes it gives us what we need instead." As the dance ended, applause broke out across the reception hall. Sophia caught Danielle's eye and saw her friend raising a champagne glass in salute. Whatever came next, whatever this unusual marriage brought, she had made her choice with open eyes. She wasn't Thomas Kingston's discarded fiancée. She was Sophia Caruso now, and Boston society would soon learn what that meant. Hours later, as the reception wound down, Vincent and Sophia found themselves in the back of his sleek black car, heading toward the Caruso family home in the North End. The day's performance had been flawless, but now that they were alone, a certain awkwardness settled between them. "Your family home?" Sophia asked, breaking the silence. "Not what I expected for our first night." "It seemed wiser than the honeymoon suite Thomas booked," Vincent replied. "Unless you'd prefer a hotel?" "No, you're right." Sophia looked out at the passing city lights. "I assume your family knows the truth about our arrangement?" "My sister and closest associates, yes. The extended family thinks it's a genuine whirlwind romance." Vincent studied her profile. "You handled yourself remarkably well today." "So did you." Sophia turned to face him. "For someone who had less than 24 hours to prepare for a wedding, you seemed completely at ease." "I'm accustomed to high-pressure situations." A hint of amusement crossed his face, though I admit marriage was not on my agenda for this weekend. The car pulled up to a stately brownstone on a quiet street. Unlike the ostentatious Kingston estate, the Caruso family home was elegant but understated, its security features expertly integrated into the historic architecture. "Home," Vincent said simply as the driver opened the door. A well-dressed older man appeared at the entrance, his weathered face breaking into a genuine smile. "Welcome home, Mr. Vincent." "Mrs. Caruso." His Italian accent was pronounced, but his English perfect. "Thank you, Paolo," Vincent replied. "This is Sophia. She'll need to know the security protocols and access codes." "Of course, sir. Everything has been prepared, as Ms. Eliana instructed." As they entered the house, Sophia was struck by the warmth of the interior. Unlike Thomas's minimalist modern condo or his family's coldly opulent mansion, Vincent's home felt genuinely lived in. Rich wooden floors, walls lined with books and family photographs created an atmosphere of comfortable elegance. "It's beautiful," Sophia said, genuinely impressed. "Not what I expected." "What did you expect? Concrete walls and gun racks." Vincent's tone was teasing rather than offended. Something more impersonal, I guess. Sophia wheeled herself further into the living room, noting that the doorways were already wide enough to accommodate her chair without difficulty. "Did you make modifications overnight?" Vincent shook his head. "The house was adapted years ago for my mother. The elevator to the upper floors is through that door, and all essential rooms are accessible." His expression softened slightly. "One advantage of our arrangement, you won't have to fight for accommodations like you would have with Kingston." The mention of Thomas brought reality crashing back. They were married now, legally binding, but strangers nonetheless. An awkward silence fell between them. "I've had the East Wing master suite prepared for you," Vincent said finally. "It has its own bathroom and sitting room. My quarters are in the West Wing. You'll have complete privacy." Relief and something like disappointment mingled in Sophia's chest. "Thank you. That's considerate." Vincent moved to a sideboard and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid. "Scotch? Or would you prefer something else?" "Scotch is fine." Sophia accepted the glass, their fingers brushing momentarily. "So what happens now?" "Now," Vincent said, settling into an armchair across from her, "we establish our new normal. Tomorrow we'll discuss security protocols, household arrangements, and how to handle public appearances. Tonight," he raised his glass, "tonight we acknowledge that we've both taken an extraordinary step into unknown territory." Sophia clinked her glass against his. To unknown territory. As they sat in the comfortable quiet of Vincent's home, the weight of the day's events began to settle around them. They had entered into this marriage with clear eyes and practical expectations, a business arrangement with mutual benefits. Yet as Vincent watched Sophia stifle a yawn, her composure finally slipping after hours of perfect performance, he felt an unexpected protectiveness that went beyond their agreement. "You should rest," he said gently. "It's been an overwhelming day." Sophia nodded, suddenly exhausted. "Which way to the East Wing?" Vincent stood. "I'll show you." As they moved through the house, Sophia taking in the accessible features that had been designed with careful attention to detail, a question formed in her mind. "Vincent?" "Yes? What do you think happens to us now?" "Really?" He stopped, considering her question with the seriousness it deserved. I think we learn to be partners before anything else. I think we discover whether this arrangement can evolve into something meaningful beyond its practical origins. His dark eyes held hers, and I think we both deserve the chance to find out without pressure or preconceptions. Sophia felt something shift within her, a settling, a recognition that whatever path lay ahead, she had chosen a man who spoke truth as he saw it. "I'd like that," she said simply. Outside the brownstone, a car slowed as it passed, its occupants noting the lights in the Caruso home. Inside were Thomas Kingston and two men with connections to the Sullivan crime family. Thomas's face was tight with anger and humiliation. "That should be my wedding night," he muttered. "My connections, my influence." The driver, a hard-faced man with Sullivan family ties, glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "It will be, Mr. Kingston. Vincent Caruso just made his biggest mistake. Taking what belongs to another man? That's asking for war." Thomas stared at the warm glow of windows that represented everything he had lost through his own cowardice. "Good," he said, his voice cold. "Let's give him one." Inside, unaware of the eyes watching them, Vincent and Sophia stood at the threshold of her new suite, the first night of their unconventional marriage stretching before them like uncharted territory. "Good night, Sophia," Vincent said softly. "Good night, husband," she replied, testing the word on her tongue. As her door closed between them, both recognized that something unprecedented had begun, a marriage built not on love or passion, but on mutual respect, shared purpose, and the recognition of worth that others had failed to see. What neither yet realized was how quickly those foundations could grow into something neither had ever expected to find. And in the darkness outside, forces were already gathering that would test their unusual bond in ways they couldn't imagine. The following weeks brought a series of adjustments as Sophia and Vincent established the rhythms of their unusual partnership. The media attention had been intense in the immediate aftermath of their wedding, Boston's gossip columns exploding with speculation about Thomas Kingston's sudden replacement by Vincent Caruso. Yet, to Sophia's surprise, she found herself caring less than she had anticipated. There was something liberating about stepping outside the rigid expectations of Boston's elite. 1 month into their marriage, Sophia sat at the breakfast table, reviewing architectural plans for the family restaurant's renovation. Vincent entered, impeccably dressed as always, and poured himself coffee before joining her. "These are excellent," he said, after reviewing her changes. "Elegant solutions." "Thank you." Sophia took a sip of her tea. "There's something else I wanted to discuss with you." "Go on." "I've been invited to speak at the Disability Rights Conference next month. It's in New York, 3 days." Sophia kept her voice casual, though they both knew this would be her first solo trip since their marriage. "I'd like to accept." Vincent was silent for a moment, considering. "New York is Sullivan territory," he said finally, naming the Irish crime family that had been their primary rivals for decades. "There would be security concerns." "I assumed as much." Sophia met his gaze directly. "But this is important to me, Vincent. Before my accident, I was building a career in accessibility advocacy and adaptive physical therapy. This conference could help me reconnect with that world." Something in her voice, the quiet determination perhaps, seemed to resonate with him. Vincent nodded slowly. "We can make it work. Marco will arrange security. Discreet but effective." As Vincent left for a business meeting, Sophia reflected on how different he was from Thomas. Where Thomas had treated her physical therapy background as a quaint occupation she'd had before the accident, before their relationship had become serious, Vincent seemed genuinely interested in her professional capabilities, consistently finding ways to incorporate her expertise into projects where it added value. That same morning, Vincent arrived at the docks as fog was still lifting off the harbor. Marco waited with 2 trusted associates, tension evident in his posture. "Boss, we found something you need to see." Inside a warehouse, Vincent surveyed the scene with cold calculation. One of their shipping containers had been broken into, nothing missing, but a single item had been left behind. A framed wedding photo of Vincent and Sophia, the glass shattered with a single bullet hole through Vincent's face. "When?" Vincent asked, his voice deceptively calm. "Last night, between midnight and 4 a.m., Marco replied. "Security cameras were disabled, professionally." "Sullivan's people?" "Most likely, but with help. This level of access suggests someone who knows our operations." Vincent picked up the damaged photograph, something dark and dangerous stirring in his chest. Using Sophia's image as a threat, crossed a line, one that demanded a decisive response. "Find the inside man," he said quietly, "and get me a meeting with Patrick Sullivan. No intermediaries. Face to face." Across town, in the pristine corner office of Kingston Development, Thomas Kingston stared out at the Boston skyline, a tumbler of scotch in his hand despite the early hour. His face, once the picture of confident privilege, now carried the haggard look of a man under pressure. Patrick Sullivan entered like he owned the room, a barrel-chested man in his 50s with silver-threaded red hair and cold blue eyes that assessed everything for weakness. "Thomas," Sullivan said, his Boston Irish accent thick as he helped himself to a drink without asking. "We need to talk about your promises." After discussing delayed permits and broken promises, Sullivan fixed his cold eyes on Thomas. "My boys left Caruso a little wedding present last night. Just a greeting, to let him know we're watching." He smiled thinly. "But for my next message, I could use some information about the wife, her routines, her security, her vulnerabilities." Thomas felt a chill run through him. "You're not suggesting—" "I'm not suggesting anything," Sullivan said smoothly. "Just a bit of pressure to remind Caruso of his priorities, maybe encourage him to focus on protecting his home rather than expanding his business interests." He smiled thinly. "And if that creates an opportunity for you to comfort your former fiancée in her distress, well, that's just a happy coincidence." The prospect of Sophia returning to him sent a surge of desire through Thomas, yet even as he nodded his agreement, a small voice warned him that he was crossing a threshold from which there would be no return. "What do you need to know?" he asked, silencing the last remnants of his conscience. Sullivan's smile widened. "Everything." The New York Disability Rights Conference was housed in a sleek, modern hotel in Manhattan. Sophia maneuvered her wheelchair through the crowd, energized by the atmosphere of passionate advocacy and intellectual engagement. Her first day had been exhilarating, participating in panel discussions on universal design and receiving several inquiries about consulting work after presenting her restaurant renovation project. As she approached the elevator to return to her room, a tall, elegant woman approached. "Sophia Caruso, I presume? I'm Helena Russo, Vincent's aunt." Sophia's surprise must have shown on her face, because Helena smiled knowingly. "My nephew didn't mention I'd be here, did he?" "No, he didn't," Sophia admitted. Helena appeared to be in her early 60s, stylishly dressed, with the same sharp cheekbones and penetrating dark eyes as Vincent. "I'm on the board of the National Accessibility Foundation. When I saw your name on the speaker list, I was hoping we might meet." Helena glanced at her watch. "Would you join me for breakfast tomorrow, without the crowds?" "I'd like that," Sophia replied after brief hesitation. That evening, returning to her room, Sophia was surprised to find her phone ringing with Vincent's private number. "Sophia." His voice carried a warmth that had become more common in their private conversations. "How was your first day?" They discussed the conference briefly before Vincent mentioned, "I understand you met my Aunt Helena." "Yes, just briefly." "We're having breakfast tomorrow." Vincent chuckled softly. "Helena doesn't do anything briefly. Be prepared for a thorough assessment of your character." Their conversation took an unexpected turn when Sophia mentioned a name Helena had dropped. "Unlike Angela?" she asked before she could reconsider. The silence that followed felt heavy. "She mentioned Angela," Vincent finally said, his tone neutral. "Just in passing. She seemed to realize she'd touched on something private." "It's not a secret," Vincent replied. "Angela was my fiancée years ago. She ended our engagement rather dramatically at the rehearsal dinner." After discussing Helena's loyalty to family and how she would want to determine whether Sophia was truly becoming part of that family, their conversation grew more personal. "Vincent," Sophia said carefully, "what exactly are we doing? This started as a business arrangement, but sometimes it feels like more," he finished for her when she trailed off. "I know. Is that concerning to you?" Vincent was silent for a long moment. "No," he finally said. "Not concerning. Unexpected." It wasn't a declaration or a promise, but something in his tone made Sophia's heart beat faster. "For me too," she admitted softly. Before ending the call, Vincent warned her, "While you're in New York, be careful. There are complications with Sullivan's organization." Meanwhile, Vincent sat alone in his study, contemplating how Sophia had become someone he genuinely respected, someone whose mind and resilience fascinated him, someone he wanted to protect not out of obligation, but out of something far more dangerous to a man in his position. He was beginning to care for his wife, not as an asset or a symbol, but as a person. And in Vincent's world, caring was the most perilous vulnerability of all. The following morning, Sophia met Helena for breakfast in the hotel's private dining room. After some pleasantries, Helena spoke candidly. "Your marriage to my nephew has caused considerable speculation," she said. "I've known Vincent his entire life. He doesn't act impulsively or without purpose. Yet marrying you was both impulsive and purposeful." Helena explained how, after Angela's betrayal, Vincent had retreated into a compartmentalized life. Yet with you, he's integrated these fears almost immediately. You're involved in the restaurant renovations. You've met his business associates. You're living in the family home. She leaned forward slightly. That suggests something significant about how he sees you. After learning more about Vincent through Helena's eyes, Sophia was asked directly, "What are your intentions regarding my nephew? Vincent protected you from social humiliation and gave you his name. That debt has essentially been paid. Is walking away your plan, or do you see potential for something more substantial?" Sophia considered her answer carefully. "When I agreed to marry Vincent, I did view it as a temporary arrangement, but over these past weeks, I've come to respect him in ways I didn't anticipate. I'm open to the possibility that what began as a business arrangement might evolve into something more authentic, but that evolution would need to be mutual." Helena smiled approvingly. "Vincent has built walls around himself for protection. Most people never see past them. I believe you might be capable of seeing the man behind the fortress, if you choose to look." As Sophia headed to her first conference session after breakfast, she was unaware of the man watching her from across the lobby, reporting her movements via phone to Sullivan's people. Nor did she notice Vincent's security team discreetly positioned throughout the hotel. "She's heading to the East Conference Room. Alone," the watcher reported. On the other end, Thomas Kingston paced nervously in his hotel room. "Remember, no harm comes to her. Sullivan promised. This is just about sending a message to Caruso." "Whatever you say, Mr. Kingston," the man replied, his tone suggesting he had different instructions. "But you might want to get ready. Things are about to get complicated." Meanwhile, Vincent was heading to meet Patrick Sullivan at neutral ground. Marco briefed him as they drove. "Reports from New York confirm Mrs. Caruso is being monitored. Our people have identified Sullivan associates tracking her movements." Vincent's expression remained impassive, but his hand tightened slightly. "And our security? In position and alert. 4 men, plus Ms. Helena's personal security." "Helena will protect what's hers," Vincent said with grim certainty. His aunt might present herself as a respectable businesswoman, but she had been raised in the old ways. If Sullivan's people made a move against Sophia while she was with Helena, they would discover exactly how dangerous the older Russo could be. "Boss," Marco said hesitantly, "if Sullivan is targeting Mrs. Caruso, perhaps we should consider a more aggressive response. Preemptive measures." Vincent shook his head slightly. "Not yet. I want to hear what Sullivan has to say first. Understand his grievances and demands before we escalate." His dark eyes hardened. "But have our people ready. If this meeting goes poorly, we move immediately to protect our interests." The car pulled up to the restaurant, and Vincent adjusted his suit jacket, ensuring the shoulder holster beneath it sat comfortably. The weapon was a last resort. Vincent had always preferred words to bullets when possible, but he was under no illusions about the potential volatility of the meeting ahead. Patrick Sullivan was already seated when Vincent entered the private dining room, a glass of whiskey in his hand despite the early hour. Two of his men stood against the wall behind him, their postures alert. "Caruso," Sullivan greeted him, not bothering to stand. "Finally decided to crawl out of your fancy North End fortress to talk business?" Vincent took the seat across from him, his movements unhurried and controlled. "I thought it was time we spoke directly about recent misunderstandings." Sullivan gave a harsh laugh. "Misunderstandings? Is that what you call moving in on Kingston Development after I had already established arrangements with the family?" "My relationship with Kingston Development predates your involvement," Vincent replied calmly. "The senior Kingston and I had agreements that his son attempted to renege on after taking temporary control. And your solution was to marry the boy's cast-off fiancée?" Sullivan's blue eyes were cold with calculation. "That's personal, Caruso. Makes me think you're letting emotions cloud your business judgment." Vincent's expression remained neutral, though inwardly he noted Sullivan's deliberate provocation. "My marriage is separate from business concerns." "Nothing is separate in our world," Sullivan countered, leaning forward. "Everything connects. Every decision ripples." He took a sip of his whiskey. "For instance, your decision to expand shipping operations in the Harbor District, traditionally neutral territory, connects directly to my decision to form a stronger alliance with Kingston. The harbor expansion was approved by the Commission months ago," Vincent pointed out. "Before your arrangement with Thomas Kingston." Sullivan waved his hand dismissively. "Details. The point is, you're overreaching, Caruso. The North End, the Italian districts, certain import routes, those are yours by tradition and agreement. But you're getting ambitious, moving into new territories, new businesses." His expression hardened. "I don't like ambition that encroaches on my interests, and I don't like threats delivered through damaged wedding photographs," Vincent replied, his voice taking on a dangerous edge. "Particularly when they involve my wife." Sullivan's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Just a reminder that actions have consequences. Speaking of your wife, how is Mrs. Caruso enjoying New York? I hear the conference is quite stimulating." The implicit threat hung in the air between them. Vincent felt a cold fury building in his chest but kept his expression impassive. "Sullivan, let me be very clear. Business disputes between us can be negotiated, territorial adjustments can be discussed, but if you or anyone associated with you comes near my wife, there will be no negotiation, no discussion, and no mercy." The raw intensity of Vincent's warning seemed to give Sullivan pause. The Irish mobster studied him with newfound interest. "Well, now that's interesting," Sullivan said slowly. "You actually care about the woman. I thought she was just a convenient chess piece." "My feelings for my wife are not relevant to our business discussions," Vincent replied evenly. "On the contrary," Sullivan leaned back, swirling his whiskey thoughtfully. "They're extremely relevant. A man with nothing to lose is dangerous but predictable. A man with something to protect." He smiled coldly. "That man can be manipulated." Vincent maintained his composure, though the threat was unmistakable. "Is that your approach, then? Manipulation through threats to family?" He shook his head slightly. "I expected better from the Sullivan organization." "Don't lecture me about family, Caruso," Sullivan snapped, his facade of amusement dropping. "You Italians don't hold the patent on family loyalty." "No, but we do understand its value, and the consequences of violating it." Vincent stood, buttoning his suit jacket with deliberate calmness. "I came here hoping we could reach an understanding like businessmen." "I see that was optimistic." Sullivan eyed him warily. "So what happens now?" "Now you have a choice." Vincent's voice was quiet but carried an unmistakable weight. "We can return to our respective territories, respect the traditional boundaries, and find ways to coexist profitably, or we can allow this situation to escalate. with all the costs that would entail for both our organizations. And Kingston Development? Thomas Kingston made his choice when he aligned with you against existing agreements. He'll face the consequences of that decision. Vincent's expression hardened. But those consequences will come through legitimate business channels. Permit delays, contract reviews, investment withdrawals, not through threats or violence. Sullivan seemed to consider this, weighing his options. And if I prefer escalation to retreat, then be certain you're prepared for what follows. Vincent turned to leave, then paused. One last thing, Sullivan. My wife is under my protection. That means she's under the protection of the entire Caruso family and all our allies. Whatever you think you know about me, about what I'm capable of, it doesn't approach what would happen if she were harmed. The threat hung in the air as Vincent departed, leaving Sullivan staring thoughtfully at his whiskey glass. The Irish mobster had expected anger, perhaps even fear, but the cold, contained fury in Caruso's eyes had been something else entirely, something primal and absolute. "Boss?" one of his men asked after Vincent had left. "What do we do about the operation in New York? Should we call it off?" Sullivan drained his glass, considering. "No," he said finally. "Proceed as planned, but tell our boys to be careful. Very careful. We're not looking to start a war today, just to send a message about what's possible." He stood, adjusting his jacket, "and get Kingston on the phone. I want to know exactly what he's not telling us about his ex-fiancée and Vincent Caruso." In New York, Sophia was leaving a panel discussion when she noticed something unusual. The two hotel staff members who had been subtly present throughout the day were suddenly nowhere to be seen. A prickle of unease ran down her spine as she remembered Vincent's warning. As she maneuvered her wheelchair toward the elevators, a man in a suit approached, his smile professional but his eyes watchful. "Mrs. Caruso?" He produced a hotel badge. "There's been a small issue with your room. Would you mind coming with me to the manager's office?" Sophia studied him carefully. Something felt wrong. Too rehearsed. Too convenient. "Actually, I'm running late for another session. Perhaps you could call my room later?" The man's smile tightened slightly. "I'm afraid it's rather urgent, ma'am. A water leak that might damage your personal belongings." Before Sophia could respond, a familiar voice called from across the lobby. "Sophia, there you are." Helena Russo approached with purposeful strides, her expression pleasant, but her eyes sharp. "I've been looking everywhere for you. Our lunch reservation is in 15 minutes. The man with the hotel badge stepped back slightly. "Excuse me, ma'am. I was just informing Mrs. Caruso about a maintenance issue in her room." "Is that so?" Helena's smile didn't reach her eyes. "How curious, since I just spoke with the actual hotel manager about upgrading Sophia's accommodations." She turned to Sophia. "Shall we go, dear?" Sophia recognized the lifeline being offered. "Of course, Helena. Lead the way." As they moved toward the hotel's main entrance, Helena spoke quietly. "My car is waiting outside. We're leaving immediately." "What's happening?" Sophia asked, keeping her voice steady despite the surge of adrenaline. "A situation that requires caution," Helena replied cryptically, until they were safely inside her luxury sedan. Only then did she turn to Sophia with serious eyes. "That man wasn't hotel staff. One of my security people recognized him as associated with the Sullivan organization." Sophia felt a chill. Vincent mentioned complications with Sullivan. He didn't elaborate. "My nephew has a talent for understatement," Helena said dryly. "The Sullivans and the Carusos have a complex history, currently taking a turn for the worse due to business disagreements. And it appears Patrick Sullivan has decided you might be a useful pressure point." "They were trying to kidnap me?" "Probably," Helena replied with disturbing calmness. "Sullivan prefers leverage to outright violence when dealing with women. He would see you as a negotiating tool." "I've already called Vincent," Helena continued. "He's arranging secure transport back to Boston immediately. My security team will remain with you until the handoff is complete." "The conference doesn't end until tomorrow," Sophia said, then immediately felt foolish for focusing on such a minor concern. Helena smiled slightly. "Your professional dedication is admirable, but I think we can agree that your safety takes precedence." Besides, her expression softened, Vincent sounded concerned. I believe he would appreciate seeing you sooner rather than later. Helena, thank you for being there at the right moment. Family protects family, Helena said simply. And whatever the origins of your marriage to my nephew, you are family now. Vincent has made that clear to all of us. As the car continued through Manhattan toward a private airfield, Sophia found herself contemplating the strange turn her life had taken. 1 month ago, she had been preparing to marry into Boston's elite society, expecting a life of charity boards and social events. Now she was being whisked away from potential kidnappers by the aunt of her Mafia boss husband, a husband who, against all expectations, she was beginning to genuinely care for. What had begun as a marriage of convenience was rapidly becoming far more complicated and far more real than either of them had anticipated.